What's up, guys? It's the real main event, the Rogue Soldier, the essential John L. Crossfire.
And I'm Mrs Crossfire.
And once again, you guys are tuned into Caught
in Conversation. Shakalaka-laka.
What is up, guys, and welcome to episode 96 of Caught in Conversation. 96, that
96.
is... look, this has just blown my mind. The fact that, we've taken a hiatus and yada, 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 but if I keep getting in the swing of things, I'm probably going to have episode 100 done within the next 2 weeks of recording this, because obviously I'm recording this on the 19th of February. It's not going to drop until the 17th of March. I feel like I've done a pretty fucking good job of getting all this shit together. But as always, I am the essential John L. Crossfire, and with me is...
I'm Nova Lee. I'm your co-host.
The lovely, beautiful, amazing, sensational copywriter Leslie Johns. Who is that guy? I don't know. That's my wife, Nova Lee. And we today, and if you're obviously, and I say it all the time, if you're reading the description or if you've seen the thumbnail, you know what we're doing, but I still feel like it needs to be set up. We are talking to the Iron Box fighter, Alistair Fleming. And I was very excited with this, and especially considering, and as we said in the previous 2 episodes, in previous 2 weeks, if you're listening to these literally as soon as they're dropping, we've done all of the episodes from, we did episode 93, which for some reason we did it backwards. We did episode 94 before 93, and then we've fast forwarded it and we've done 95 and now 96 in this same day that we're recording this, and very productive day, and it was all but one. The other 2 were all on a whim. I literally just said, hey, who wants to be on the pod? And we got 2 podcast episodes out of that. So, Yay, I'm pretty keen. Miss Nova Lee, would you like to do the honors of hitting us with the song of the week? Because you actually picked the song of the week again, just like you did for the most recent episode. So please tell us what you have chosen and why you have chosen it, etc., etc.
Okay, so for our song of the week, I have chosen Anthem for the Underdog by 12 Stones. And I picked them because I was like, all this MMA talk's making me think of one of my favorite movies, and people can...
judge.
Give me judgy shit, whatever. But I picked this song because it's from Never Back Down. So it's meant to be like a martial arts, MMA, Muay Thai-ish, get pumped fighting movie. And I was like, as cheesy as it is, it's one of my favorite movies. And that's why I went with that song, because that's the first time that I've actually heard that song. I've always kind of been into 12 Stones, but that song was like teenage Talika first heard it on Never Back Down.
And of course, wrestling fans will know 12 Stones as We Are One, because it was the original Nexus's theme song back in 2011, or 2010 into 2011 rather, before the new Nexus took over with CM Punk and yada yada yada. And the match of the week this week is Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe. Lockdown 2008 is a cage match. Obviously, Lockdown was an all-cage match pay-per-view, but this one had a little twist, and that's one thing that I feel TNA have always done better than WWE. The Hell in a Cell pay-per-view has kind of bastardized the Hell in a Cell, yet the Lockdown pay-per-views every year worked because they still had gimmick matches within the realm of the cage, and this one was quote-unquote MMA rules. So I feel we're talking to the Iron Box fighter. He's done shoot fighting, he's done wrestling.
Makes sense, yeah.
Kurt Angle, obviously a great amateur wrestling, went on to win a gold medal with a broken freaking neck, and Samoa Joe is Samoa Joe, actually current AEW World Champion as we record this. Actually, Revolution is going to air before this podcast airs.
Revolution is a mystery.
Nice little play on words there. I am actually ridiculously excited because this is going to be the first AEW pay-per-view, actually, that I'm going to order in 3 fucking years. Really hoping Swerve wins, but as we record this, Samoa Joe, AEW Champion, Samoan Submission Machine. Say that 10 times fast and you'll win nothing. Maybe I'll give you a cookie. Mrs Crossfire got cookies in the last few episodes. But yeah, Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe, Lockdown 2008. Awesome. Yeah, shout out Jackson Thornhill. Hashtag and
Thanks
still,
for mentioning cookies.
Hashtag and still ICW Heavyweight Champion.
And still.
Keeping it in Rogue. But without further ado, I think, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. For Alistair Fleming, Miss Nova Lee, would you like to...
Ladies and gentlemen, your Iron Box fighter, Alistair Fleming!
Ladies and gentlemen, I am here with the Iron Box, Alistair Fleming. Very excited because, as we just said just before I started recording, I've met you one time at Central West in 2022, so be 2 years, I think, next month or the month after, which is crazy to think that it's already been that quick. Obviously, I've got my co-host, Miss Nova Lee, with me. This is obviously now as we record, this is the third one we've done today, but it'll be 3 separate weeks. So the last 2 episodes we've been kind of trying to work out the kinks a little bit.
Dynamic of stuff, yeah.
She's the official co-host, but she's only just started doing interviews with me. So we're trying to work out the whole not talking over each other, but also letting the guests speak and da-da-da-da. So we shall do our best to ask you questions and not go too crazy. And we both have ADHD, so it could go God knows where.
That sounds about right. Well, hello, ladies, gentlemen, and anybody else listening. I am Alistair, the Iron Box Fleming. I'm a professional wrestler, an amateur fighter, and a maker of high-quality martial arts and professional wrestling gear. And it's very exciting to be here on... Am I caught in conversation today?
Yes, caught in conversation, which is a very...
Caught in conversation with John
I could have
Crossfire.
just called it Caught in the Crossfire and it still would have made sense, but I don't know, I had to be difficult with a shitty attempt at a pun, but here we are.
There you go. And it's an exciting time because I think last time I was on Caught in Conversation, it was accidentally walking into the wrong dressing room back in ICW
Nice.
Yes,
Central
that's
West.
right. And you were just like,
Nice.
I'm so sorry. And I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. But
I was
I'm glad,
nervous as all hell.
I'm glad you brought up the gear making, though, actually, because I forgot to make a mental note of that. So, Miss Novalee, if you want to make a mental note about that to ask Alistair further in the conversation if we get a chance, please do, because I've seen the work that he has done with other people up close, and it is amazing and beautiful and shiny.
I actually just followed his Instagram to have a bit of a look at the gear.
And I
previously,
even like not to go too off topic before we even really get into the cusp of who Alistair is, but I've noticed you've done like some like hobby painting and stuff with like figures and stuff.
Yeah. So back well and
Jack
truly
of all
before.
trades.
Yeah. I'm very useful at work. I do disability support work, and the fact that I've done every craft known to man means that whoever I'm working with that day has something to do.
That is amazing. There we
really
go,
cool.
getting a little look at Alistair's real life here outside of the whichever respective ring or cage or octagon or whatever he's in. That's really cool. He's a teddy bear. He's a disability support worker. It just so happens that he could
There you go.
rip an arm or a leg off at the same time. But because this is the first time being actually on the show, I always break the ice with the same question. It's pretty simple, pretty generic question, to be honest, but I feel like it's a great start. And that is, Alistair, what was your earliest wrestling memory?
All right. So I've been through like the lore of Alistair getting into professional wrestling, and every time I remember something new. So just thinking about it the other day, I was at the Bathurst show in 1999, and I saw a wrestling match there, and I think it was TNT. I'm not 100% sure,
right.
but it may or may not. I was only 6 years old at the time, but it might have been TNT out there, although he was working as a heel, so it can't have been him. There you are, wrestling at the Bathurst show. If anybody knows who wrestled at the Bathurst show in 1999, tell me who it was, because that'll scratch an itch in my brain.
I'm sure there's some wrestling nerd out there that'll have the answer.
Well, then I forgot about wrestling until I was 13, and I was staying at a friend's house to catch a bus up to Sydney for rugby. And they had pay TV, and on Fox 8 were episodes of Raw, I think, at the time. And I'm sitting there with nothing to do, waiting for The Simpsons to come on, so I might as well watch some wrestling. And I see, first up, it's Heidenreich, I think, and he's eating a big bar of chocolate, and one of the divas comes out and does something sexually suggestive with him. And then the next segment is Kurt Angle wanting to have sex with Booker T's wife. And so 13-year-old Alistair sees this and goes, yeah, this probably isn't for me. And I ignore it again until much, much later in my life when I come to the shoot side of it. So shoot wrestling, guys like Bas Rutten in Pancrase, Minoru Suzuki, and all of that. I discovered that a lot later in my life. And that was my actual introduction to the real world of professional wrestling.
I feel like that's a good transition
Yeah.
to our next question.
So our next question is, what came first, wrestling or MMA?
MMA. So if we're following the YouTube rabbit hole, Alistair, it always comes back to rugby, weirdly. I was terrible at it. But I was playing rugby at uni, and I was looking at something to stay fit during the off-season, and I was looking at all the martial arts studios around, like Macquarie University, where I was at the time. And it was all just bouncing off my head, because at this point I'd just seen Kung Fu movies. I didn't know what I was looking at. So I was on YouTube just Googling every single one, and I found a show called Human Weapon. And that had Jason Chambers and Bill Duke in it, these two American guys. They go all the way around the world, and they stop up in Greece and learn a bit of pancration and then have a pancration fight. They go to Korea and they'd do Taekwondo. And then the American one was MMA, and on that was Bas Rutten. And if you don't know who Bas Rutten is, just Google Bas Rutten Pancrase fights commentary and watch the whole playlist, because he is an incredibly charismatic individual. Pancrase is the funkiest like mixed martial arts rule set you'll ever see, and you can learn pretty much the basics of MMA watching this man destroy various Japanese people over a period of X years. And I found that, and I watched that, and I thought, this is the coolest thing in the entire world. Of course, Pancrase, that rule set of palm strikes and rope escapes, a very professional wrestling-esque rule set, isn't necessarily done anymore. So I found what I thought to be the next closest thing, which was mixed martial arts. And I signed up at Prodigy MMA in Artarmon, learned with the guys there for a little while. Then I moved back to Orange and started training at, eventually after trying out a couple of places, 2800 MMA there with Greg Wiltshire. And he took me from a very lost young man and turned me into a functional human being. And coincidentally, I also became a decent enough fighter in that time.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, cool. So that kind of segues a little bit into something else I wanted to ask you as well. What's the difference and similarities for you personally between like training for MMA and wrestling, if there is any?
Very, very different training ideologies, training approaches. But in my opinion, mixed martial arts and professional wrestling are cousins that don't talk to each other. If you're watching any mixed martial arts event, the setup in terms of a sanctioning body and all that, it's the same as a professional wrestling event. The promotion owns the belt. They will give pushes to guys that they like. Guys they think will sell tickets will get better fights because they want those guys to succeed.
That's fair, yep.
And that sort of similarity is there. There are a lot of differences in methodology. I remember, my first training up until very recently has been only at the Professional Wrestling Academy of PWA. And we had so many people at that tryout. It was like 60 people. And I remember getting like 2 or 3 repetitions at best of like a role or whatever we were doing in a day, and just having real difficulty picking it up to start with because there was just so many people. And I'm used to, at a martial arts place, if I'm taught a variation on an armbar or an entry or whatever, I've got 5 minutes with my partner where we just go off and we just do that, and that's all we do, and I can get as many repetitions as I want. Whereas there isn't a wrestling school in Australia that has 4 rings set up so people can run spots simultaneously. They've got 1 at best, and so it's very hard to make that adjustment to like, okay, I've got to figure out as many of the kinks as I can before I get in the ring and try this spot, try this move, try whatever. I've got to really walk it through in my head before I attempt it in the ring, because otherwise I just blow my 1 rep, and then I have to go think about it for 10 minutes and feel like a failure, if that makes any sense.
I could only imagine, like, with the talent that we have in Australia, and like, maybe we're biased, but like if we had some sort of, almost performance center like type-esque setup, I could only imagine how amazing like that would be with the talent we have that's already at the level. Because you mentioned PWA, obviously. To me, PWA is the number one company in the country, and has been for a handful of years now. And there's a reason for that with the trainers and talent that they have. And I'm like, imagine a PWA or even an MCW in Melbourne, to be fair, or EPW in Perth, having like a full-on like at least 2 rings or 3 rings set up to where they can kind of rotate between like different things. That would just the amazingness that would come out of already amazing talent, if that makes sense. My ADHD brain, but like just imagine that. But continue your second part of the question.
Unfortunately, it's a very pie in the sky idea, because as we all know, as people who wrestle in Australia, the money isn't there for that.
No,
You've got one
definitely not.
ring which you keep updated. I think the newest ring in the country is now the Vortex's James Oakday and
Yes.
Langham's ring out in
Brand new
Cowra.
ring, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And every other ring has an amount of years on it. The only other way that would work is if, any promotions or people that own a ring would have a positive relationship with each other.
If only, right?
Which is even further pie in the sky than having the money for that. If we were to talk about differences between professional wrestling and mixed martial arts, there's one. I've been all over the country. I've trained with lots of people. There is not a promotion in mixed martial arts that I have worked with that I have a bad relationship with. There isn't a promoter I have a bad relationship with. There isn't one time where I feel I was screwed over, and I cannot say that for professional wrestling.
That, honestly, fair. That's fair.
That is so fair.
Would you like to continue your second part of that question?
What was the second part?
What was the second part? So it was like,
So you
differences and
asked the
similarities.
difference and similarities, and then did you want to follow up with that?
I'll go to the second
Yeah.
question now. Yep, cool, easy. Sorry, just still getting used to the format. So
That's
what
all right.
what was the deciding factor that got you into the wrestling business, and when did you decide that you wanted to do it?
All right. 2019 was, I think, at this point, this is all, so the time is a flat circle and it's all blurring together. I had my last fight that I've had, which was against a guy called Matty Oliver in Canberra for a promotion called Storm Damage. They run incredible shows. So I had that fight. I beat him there, and then I'd taken 2 fights in 3 weeks, and I hadn't managed my money well, and I had to sit down and I had to work just because that was the first time in my life that I've lived paycheck to paycheck. I was never letting that happen again. So I sat down, did that, put in the work, and then this is coming to late 2019, early 2020. What happens to the world? It all shuts down because we've got COVID.
It all goes shit.
We're still trying to come out of that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the gym that I went to in Orange, 2800, had to close down. They couldn't reach an agreement with the landlord, and so Greg had to pack up all his stuff and move out to Kewdale, and now he runs it out of there, and he's always had a really good facility. For such a tiny town, there's 40 people in all of Kewdale, and there is, in my mind, the best mixed martial arts gym in the country there. Well, not country, but, in west of the mountains,
Yep.
that's where it is. But, that's going out to Kewdale every day. I've had to work. I was working shift work as doing disability support work there. And it's just, this isn't, my life wasn't going the direction that I thought I needed to be going. I was stagnating and just feeling kind of shitty out in Orange. And so I applied to a couple of places up in Sydney, thinking that I'd come up here and start training at Australian Top Team with Ashkan and Suman Mokhtarian. That was the plan. Moved up here in August 2020, signed up to Australian Top Team, and then I saw on Facebook an ad for the tryout at the Pro Wrestling Academy.
So
I
it just
thought
fell into place, basically.
it all fell into place, yeah. And so October 2020, I went there. I did 300 squats, carried some guy around the ring who was too heavy for me, did all of that, and they signed up there and started training at the Pro Wrestling Academy. There you go. That was the transition.
And now he's doing PWA and Wrestle Strong and wherever else, and I'm sure we'll get into that as we get deeper into the conversation. I didn't even put this in my notes because I thought it was too much of a generic question, but now that we've talking, I kind of just want to ask it because it varies from person to person. For you, because there's a handful of people that have done both wrestling and MMA, which one for you personally is the more challenging?
I think if there were quite a few things that wrestling could forget that we've held on to from the time it was an elaborate con. We sort of forgot all of those things, stopped getting in each other's way. It'd be much easier.
Fair enough.
Yeah. In terms of, physically, about the same. But the thing is, if I look at preparing for some of my wrestling matches or certain periods of my preparation, sometimes it's been miserable. It was never miserable for me fighting. Even when I was just getting the shit kicked out of me, because we brought in like Charlie Bubb, who recently fought. This is for, I don't know how many actual martial arts fans will have on the Caught in Conversation podcast, but very recently in Abu Dhabi there was a card called Australia versus the World, and it was a Muay Thai card, and two guys on that card, so fighting top level guys in the world, were Jesse Astle and Charlie Bubb. Both of those guys used to just kick the crap out of me back in Orange. But at the end of that lesson, I'd feel great and I'd feel like I'd gotten like a better fighter. There have been quite a few professional wrestling training sessions where I've got to the end of that and I feel like I've gotten worse or I've gotten further away from where I want to be. And a lot of that's, in my mind, just holding on to the old bullshit that I don't think we need to. I think we could make it a lot easier to be a wrestler. I think we could lose a lot less people if we learned that the secret is in fact out there. Everybody knows that wrestling is now a work. We don't need to have the culture of silence or the culture of not informing people when their opportunities are coming up. We don't need to hold on to our spots so badly and work through injuries that we make a bunch worse. Just seeing all of that makes it very hard to engage in this hobby because as much as we want it to be a business in this country, it's not. No one is making bill money for this. No, show me one person in the country who paid their rent consistently with professional wrestling, and I'll show you a liar.
Yeah.
That is so fair.
And I think that, and honestly, that's a rant we've gone on many times on this podcast. Like I'm some sort of grizzled young vet, which I'm obviously not. But it's one thing that it's almost plain as day. It's black and white, but for some reason they're still holding on to that, I guess, old school mentality. And there's a lot of old school lessons that definitely are still important, but definitely like this is my spot and this and that. I feel it's so passé, and it's like, why are we still doing this?
Who do we have recently? Not to talk poorly on somebody. I'm not going to say that this man was an idiot for doing this, but because he feels pressured by the attitude that we all have. Matthew Boyton, formerly Matthew Rogers, formerly Boss of Bones, tore his bicep against UGG. And then the next week went up to New E Pro and wrestled in the Rumble and then tore it even more. And now he's been out for months. That attitude isn't necessarily there in fighting. Like, if you're not there to give 100% of yourself, you're going to get the shit kicked out of you. This is a terrible idea. Don't go to the fight. And promoters understand, and they'll have people to slot in. There are so many people that are ready and raring for spots in Australian wrestling. So many people that are talented workers, talented wrestlers, good people who are being wasted because we're people who are hurt, injured, bored of this. I've seen so many people who wrestle, who have no interest in what they're doing. They're just doing it to mark time, just hanging around. And you don't have to. You can take a break. It'll still be there when you come back.
Well, even like,
and it always has been.
Yeah. Even in like, I would just use UFC as the example because it's the biggest one. But like, I'm a casual MMA fan. I used to be hardcore into Bellator and UFC, but obviously a lot of my favorite fighters have kind of, they've gone and retired, and I'm just like, it's not as exciting for me these days. But there's a handful of people but how many fighters in those promotions have gone with 24 hours notice? This guy's in there now because XYZ, and it's just like, holy shit! Like, that's the biggest company in the world. If they can do it, surely insert small independent wrestling company that runs, X amount of times every few months or, once a month at the best, can, slot someone else in with a week or 2 weeks or however many weeks notice. If the biggest company in the world can get a top tier fighter within 24 hours, like, surely you have those connections.
Yeah.
You'd think so. But I don't know what we're holding on to anymore. Back in the day, I could kind of understand it because this was people's bills. And, the more people that were allowed in the circle of trust of wrestling, the more it could get out, the more leaks could happen, the more information that David Meltzer would have. But that's not the case anymore. Everybody's talking to everybody. We're letting it all out in the world. The circle of trust is allowed to be bigger. There are enough spots. There's enough wrestling to go around. You can't tell me that in all of Sydney, the maximum amount of pro wrestling fans is 200. There's 1 million people in this city. You just got to, be imaginative. You surely, like, double running on a Saturday or a Sunday can't be the catastrophe that it has been for so long. What is going on?
But if we can just transition a little bit, because otherwise I feel like
Sure.
between my ADHD and we're just going to rant and I'm just going to have you for hours on end and then I'll feel terrible. But like something that I didn't put in my notes, but you brought up, because I literally forgot it when we scheduled this, because we scheduled this with just a couple of hours notice. I forgot about you making the gear, but the moment you mentioned it, I was like, yeah, shit, he's made this dude, and I've seen a lot of it up close and it looks freaking awesome. One, when did you, like, I guess, learn to sew or whatever, but what got you into making, like, professional wrestling / MMA kick pads and gear and stuff? Like,
so I always wanted, like, the Pancrase fit. So not necessarily the OG one of trunks and knee pads and kick pads, but I wanted, like, ballet tudo shorts, so black and white stripes, bad boy style ones, but that it would actually fit, that weren't built for, like, a Brazilian's ass, for a white man, for a skinny man's butt. Because I used to wear them when I fought, and they just looked like normal shorts. They're supposed to be skin tight. They were not on me. As much as the squats of professional wrestling have improved that part of my physique, nothing's catching up to that. But I did always want that sort of fit. And I was looking at high spots and just looking at the shipping and whatever. I'm like, I could buy a sewing machine for this. And then conveniently, my work gave me a gift card at the end of 2020 for $100 that was applicable to Spotlight. So I went to Spotlight, and I bought a Semco Inigo 6, which was the cheapest sewing machine that they had. That was like a sewing machine, not a toy. And I made my first set of knee pads with that. And then since then, like, I made another pair for myself and my girlfriend. And then I made a couple of pairs for guys that I trained with. And then I started selling them. And there's a few pairs out there that I wish I could take back. But that got me into it. And just since then, like, I started with knee pads, then I made kick pads, then I started making shorts, and I built up. And, like, it's been a very useful tool in professional wrestling, because as much as people on the internet are going to say it's all about hard work and grit and dedication and putting your time in and keeping your head down and whatever else, that's a lie. It's a business of connection. And the more connections you have, the more opportunity you're going to be able to develop for yourself. And through my connections with gear making, I've come into contact with most promoters in the States, and it gave me my first opportunity. The only reason I was on that show in Cara, which I can't remember who I was replacing, but whoever got flooded out on the road from Newcastle, was because I was coming down there to deliver Barry Blake's gear that he wanted to wear on that show.
Oh wow! So because I remember he got gear from you, but I didn't realize that. Jesus, wow.
Yeah. So just he said we hadn't really communicated very well. Like, he told me he wanted it before that date. I made it before that date, and then he's like, "Oh, by the way, I need it in Cara on Saturday." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Lucky my girlfriend still lives in Orange, so I got in the car, drove down to Cara. Then the floods took out. I can't remember who it was. It wasn't Adrian Axton, because he was in the main. Somebody else starting with an A.
Because for some reason I was thinking C Factor, but then I realized no, because that's literally who you wrestled, and I should remember that because I refed it. But shit, yeah. I can't remember. Wow. But anyway, yeah, that's again what, like, everything just kind of seems to fall into place for Alistair. It seems he kind of does one thing and then it just bleeds into another, and thus goes the circle of life.
Life is a serendipitous thing. If you let it happen to you, you can sort of get washed over and stuck somewhere. As long as you're out there and going, all right, this has happened to me. How can I make this not happen to me? How can I make this opportunity stick next time? If you're thinking that and approaching it in that way, you know, things will work out most of the time. You know, sometimes you can't combat every possible terrible thing that could happen in the world. But yeah, I was constantly... Because this was the instruction we were given. We'd had that really long lockdown in 2021. And during that time, because we couldn't train professional wrestling, PWA did something that I thought was excellent, was that every night for those X weeks, we had a wrestling class. And it was via Zoom. And I had Shazza McKenzie telling me how to run my my social media, because she's got however many thousand followers. Now, I can't necessarily be putting up the same contact that Shazza McKenzie is. I'm not sure if the market's quite there for me. But, you know, I make pole gear now, so, you know, I might start posing. I had
Someone will start doing that type of content in your
Get
gear, and
butt
you'll be
pads.
like, hell yeah.
Get butt
Exactly.
pads.
Who else do we have? We had Jack Bonza looking at match review and like how to approach it from a storytelling like position, which is very good. We have promo class every Thursday, and I think that if any one thing has contributed to me as a wrestler and like my improvement, it was that promo class, because I hit every single one. I had a video uploaded for Jordan Unsocial to look at and tell me what I was doing right and wrong. And now I think I have like a really good setup, and I have a good sort of framing device for my promos. They are unique, and I don't think anyone else does them quite like me. But yeah, there's all of that. Where was I going with this? I'm sure I started this rant for a reason. Oh, and then we had Jimmy Townsend, and we had Steph DeLander call in from the WWE Performance Center at the time and tell us how to make connections and how to get booked. Yeah. Now, this, of course, didn't necessarily work out, because I got back from ICW Cowra, and I had Kai Drake come up to me and go, "You got booked on the weekend. That wasn't necessarily a smart idea because you didn't clear it with X, Y, and Z." And I took that quite poorly, to be honest, because we had been told how to do this. I had been brought up to the match-ready class, and I thought, this is not the attitude that you should have. This isn't a show that your fans are going to. This is the show that the people of Cowra will see. BWA isn't necessarily going to go to Cowra at any point in the next 100 years. This is the same. This is where a bit of friction started with the company. Was I looked at this from mixed martial artist perspective, which was, this is like someone who's in the UFC telling me that I shouldn't have gone as a white belt to a white belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, but you need ring time. You need practice. You need all the time you can get to be a good professional wrestler. You can't learn it all in the gym, because crowd reaction doesn't exist in the gym. Everyone's sitting there silently going, "Oh, that pin wasn't great." They're not reacting the way that a crowd will come in and react to a show. And you need that feedback to learn how to respond to that. And there is no fitness like match fitness. There's no other way to... You can simulate so many things, but you can't simulate going out there and actually wrestling in front of a crowd. And I think that is something that has genuinely been lacking with the company, is a relationship with one of the other federations in Sydney or New South Wales. Kind of now with Newey Pro, I've been managing to get up there and get some work and get some ring time. But actually getting time in the ring for people who aren't quite PWA ready, but can wrestle, and getting them up to that level rather than sitting in purgatory waiting for an opportunity that may or may not never come.
And this is where I like, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is why I like where they do the like the Green Label all ages show now, is because there's a lot of people on those shows now that would get booked that wouldn't necessarily quite be ready for the full Black Label crowd, which is kind of what you're saying. But I feel like having I don't want to say like bottom, like rung, like
a developmental,
like a feeder system or a developmental, But while we're on the topic of matches and stuff, I feel like this is a good segue into the next question. Obviously, you've only been able to have kind of, I guess, probably a handful, I'd say. Maybe more than a handful, because of
I'm
lockdowns
up
and
to
everything
13 now,
13?
which is, positive. There you go.
But what's your favourite match of all time that you've seen? And then on the flip side of that, what is your favourite match that you have had so far?
So we're going to go deep into wrestler hipsterdom here, because
mixture of trying to put you over and also just mark out in the process.
Yeah.
I don't know. It depends how much Rings or UWFI you've watched, whether or not what I'm going to say is going to plug into your brain. Because my favorite professional wrestling match of all time is probably Volkan versus Kiyoshi Tamura of the Mega Battle Tournament of 1997. So Rings. Mild history lesson for anybody who needs to know. If you've seen sort of just any shoot incidents on YouTube, you'll have seen Akira Maeda versus Andre the Giant in just a travesty. But Akira Maeda got angry with everyone at New Japan, went off and started the UWF, got angry with everyone at the UWF and went off and started Rings. And Rings was a shoot-style federation, so it was presented as a legitimate product. It wasn't necessarily all the time. a lot of the theatricality and unreality and artifice of a contemporary professional wrestling match was taken out and eschewed in the place of a martial arts exhibition. And that may sound, what, you mean these people aren't going to hit the ropes? How is this supposed to be exciting in any way? But he found, not for the first little while, it was quite difficult for him to find talent, but in Russia, he found a man called Volkan. And Volkan didn't know what professional wrestling was, and in my mind, is the best professional wrestler of all time. Because he went out there and received the instruction, just do everything in your martial art that's fun. And he goes, yes, cool. And so there's all these wrist throws, there's double wrist lock suplexes. Yeah. No. But the thing is, the way that Sambo is, it's a mix between various grappling arts from Russia and its surrounding, Soviet states at the time, and judo. And so it's throws, it's takedowns, it's joint locks. It plugs in so well to professional wrestling. And he just came over there, and of course he knows how to break fall, which is pretty much a bump. And he's putting on incredible matches. And then Kyoshi Tamura...
deep dive into this, because this sounds so fucking fascinating. Yeah. This is amazing.
Kyoshi Tamura started off in the original UWF, got his orbital broken by Maida, went off to UWFI, fought a bunch, wrestled a bunch there with Nobuhiko Takada. Then he went off. He left UWFI when they were getting folded back into New Japan because he wasn't given a spot in the feud. He'd just gone and beaten Patrick Smith of UFC 1 and 2 in a shoot fight on a K1 card and was like, I am the best guy here. Why have I not got a spot in this feud of New Japan and whatever else? And they punished him by making him have equal matchups with a rookie at the time. And those are incredible matches. That rookie was Kazushi Sakuraba of Pride and whatever else. But so he got upset with that and then went off to rings. And in rings, he had an incredible shoot and shoot style career. And so you have a larger Volkan and a smaller but sort of scrappier and more athletic Kyoshi Tamura putting on not a wrestling match, but a fight to a worked outcome, if that makes any sense. And that it's incredible to watch. I show that to wrestling fans. They're like, this is really cool. I show that to people who are fighters, and I don't tell them it works, and I get them at the end, and they go, that was a pretty cool fight, bro. And I go, ha-ha, got ya. It was a work, bro.
See, I'm loving that. I don't know how much of Josh Barnett's Bloodsport you've watched with partnering with GCW on the Indies, but they do a very similar type thing, and it's honestly in this day and age, it's probably not as what's the word I'm looking for? Convincing, mainly because half of them are known indie professional wrestlers that are on these shows. So you kind of go, well, surely it's a work, but they're basically, it's the ring. There's no ropes, and they're, for all intents and purposes, they're fighting. And they've just announced Nick Nemeth is doing one on the indies, which actually, I'm just a massive Dolph mark, but a lot of people forget that he actually has a proper amateur wrestling background. And he's going up against Speedball Mike Bailey, who obviously does the high flying, but he's got the kicks and stuff. So they're basically going to do this as a kickboxer Muay Thai fight style versus a grappling style, and it's going to be a work shoot. And I'm actually very interested to see what they can put together, because obviously, as I said, the preface is that it is a work, but they're going to present it as a shoot. And I'm very interested to see how they pull this off.
Well, and that plugs into my favorite match that I've done. So November last year, I made gear for Joel Bateman. So once again,
shout out to Joel. Many shout outs on this podcast for Joel.
Just the power of connections in professional wrestling. I made Joel several sets of knee pads. I made the Blood Fighter ones that he destroyed in the Dream tournament, the one where he gets whacked with a whippersnipper.
Yes.
And he just ruined those. But ever since then, I've just been pumping out knee pads for him because he keeps just destroying them. And we'd gotten to talking about shoot and shoot style, and he runs his Mad Earth Society show. Mm-hmm. And he has Jordan Sampson, who, incredible wrestler, Muay Thai fighter, and the match just made itself. And I went down there, and we said three things that we were going to do, maybe, if we got to them. And then we just had a fight to a worked outcome. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And, there's a couple of, and this is where I think there is a difference. There was always something missing in blood sport for me. And I'm watching it, I'm like, this is so close. I can feel it. And I felt it when I was in my match with Samson. And it was, I need to forget professional wrestling. I need to take it and put it somewhere else. Because I was waiting. I was letting things happen. I was helping. And in that environment of a work shoot, I don't think you should help. You don't necessarily hinder. You don't have someone going, he wants to body kick me. So you don't open up or feed to the body kick. You just go, well, get it under my elbow then if you're going to land that body kick. He's going to try and take me down. You don't take a bump for him. You don't want to go down. You stay standing and you stay strong. And in the opening of that match, I think we got it. In the middle, I really feel I lost it. And I think there was a better match to be had between us under that same environment. I would love to do it again.
Well,
and then right at the end, we got it again.
A new pop-up show, and I think was it your match that was just announced?
Oh no, I'm not on this one. This is far too close. They announced that 2 weeks ago, and I sent a message to Jem. I'm like, you haven't told me shit. I need to get down for New South Wales. She's like, no, next one. You're okay.
I think it was Samson versus Xavier Black, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that's why I was getting confused because you mentioned Samson, and I was like, wait, no, my bad. Sorry.
Yeah. There is something that's maybe in the works for the next one that I am incredibly excited for, but I will not offer any spoilers, and, it depends on availabilities and whether or not I can get flights and all that stuff. But you will see me on Mad Earth again, because that was the most fun I've had wrestling, and I got to have my match. The whole reason that I got into professional wrestling wasn't to have 30-minute indie classics where I do 500 dives. It was to do a rings match or a UWFI match or a Capture International match or one of those work shoot matches and see if I could present it to an Australian crowd and to see if it could work. And it did to casual non-wrestling fans who came in there and got crunk. They got mad into it. And I took one bump in that match and that was the finish. And I think that to go back into the rant, wrestling as it has been for however many years of booking out a room in a club and selling tickets and paying only your workers and not paying your crew and whatever doesn't work anymore. It doesn't make money. You can't do it consistently without taking advantage of people in a way that I find very unpleasant and uncomfortable to be associated with. I think that we need to look at new avenues, new creative directions, or new ways of putting on events. And I think that Mad Earth Society or Dude, Where's My Ring in Perth, those sort of shows that are leaner, that require less setup, that don't necessarily sell tickets but get paid by the venue, and that way there's a guaranteed amount of money coming in. That way you can pay everyone. That's a smart way to go. And there is an old fuddy-duddy attitude of, it's not in the ring, it's not professional wrestling.
I've had this argument many times because although I have never done a no-ring show yet, I really appreciate the art of it. And it comes back to what you said. And because you've got the MMA shoot-style background, it probably does help you. But it's like, make me believe what you're doing is real without straight up murdering the man or woman or whatever, the worker that you're with. And it writes itself. It's like everything. There's good and bad in everything. Yeah, I'm sure there's terrible no ring shows out there, with all the wrestling in the entire world. I'm sure there's one that's meant to be, the drizzling shits. But I don't like that any genre in general just gets paintbrushed as this isn't wrestling or that's not wrestling. It's so...
Well, if we're talking about clout and whatever, and I feel like that is what a lot of wrestling comes down to. It comes down to how much clout have you got? Have you got enough clout to make whatever you're doing interesting, boutique, and progressive, or is it yours regressive and substandard and subpar? It just depends on how much clout you've got in the business at any given time. So, Choco Pro over in Japan, no ring, a mat. Chris Brooks has been on Choco Pro. I can go down a list of Japanese wrestlers and legends that have been on Choco Pro, and Australians who are of great talent. Mitch Ryder was on Choco Pro. Tell me that Mitch Ryder isn't a good wrestler. It wouldn't be would associate himself with a terrible show.
Phenomenal wrestler.
He's so good. We had him come down to the academy when I was just starting out, and Jack Dullahan was coming by for the 2 weeks that they offered free there, and we were doing a little spot. Jack and I were doing a little spot, and I managed to pop Mitch Ryder by being Rex Kwon Do, essentially, in my spot. And I thought that was really cool, because then I saw him wrestle on later, and I saw him move, and I go, I impressed that guy with what I did in the ring. I must be doing okay at this, if that makes any sense.
100%. And you just, at the end of the day, like, and not to rant too much before I get into the next question, but I always kind of look at this podcast as the same, right? Like, it doesn't have as much numbers as other people that I know or inspire to be like. But I think I'm at this point where, obviously I had to take a break due to health, but I'm at a point now where the numbers are starting to come in to an extent, but that's not what makes it. It's just like the quality of the conversation. And that's why it's courting conversation, because I want to, even if it's only like one or two people that it helps, I want to help the people that I'm talking to get at least one new fan or two new fans and just basically tell their story. And I feel like surely from this, because you are, New South Wales kind of more base wrestler, hopefully the couple of viewers that I do have in Western Australia and Victoria, through the connections that I've built with this pod, as you said, connections, I don't know, somehow I've built more connections sitting on my ass doing a podcast than I ever did actually wrestling, but hey, I'm not sure that's like a bad thing. But like, you could get like one or two people from Dude, Where's My Ring or whatever, look at you and be like, hey, we could fly that guy over because he fits into our style perfectly. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, it's because of me that he got it. But you know what I mean? Like, one person, I've got a handful of people in Western Australia that listen to my show, and it's like, hey, this guy does this. He could fit in with you guys.
Exactly. Well, you'd hope so. But then again, back to playoff. There is one more person. So as good as Mitch Ryder is, let's think about Masakatsu Funaki, former Triple Crown champion. Most recently, Noah GHC heavyweight champion. Has wrestled on open mats in a bar 2 years ago for AFC, which is like this mixed, it has kickboxing, grappling, and a professional wrestling. If it's good enough for Masakatsu Funaki, it's good enough for an Australian guy whose purse is $8 and will never leave the country. Like, it's just wrestling. Just stop pigeonholing it into this business model that no longer works and requires exploitation.
It's almost gatekeeping in a way, and it's kind of pissing me off. But, like, I'll transition to the next question, otherwise I feel like, again, we're both just going to be ranting.
We'll just go and we'll never stop.
But if we can, again, mark out a little bit, but you've been a fan for quite a while, so who are some of your dream opponents, both, internationally, locally, dead or alive, past, present, some that maybe not realistic at all in your mind, and then some that are, are almost goals in a way. And what are some of your dream stipulations? Obviously, I'm guessing the shoot file is going to be up there. But
just always just UWF rules or just some variety of shooty context, and we'll run through the list of people I'd like to wrestle. So we'll start with the sort of semi-realistic ones in the country of Australia. These ones are probably going to happen. James Long, new guy, started out at Wrestle Strong Dojo, brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, amateur MMA background. I reckon we put on a great show. Adam Washburn, also formerly Washburn, now Adam Fakar of Fighters Against Child Abuse. Oh, yes, also Wrestle Strong Dojo. Yes. Yeah, love to wrestle those guys. That's going to happen. We'll keep going down. Gore. Oh, geez. I reckon I'd die, but it would be, an incredible death. It would be ritual sacrifice.
You would die a glorious death.
Yeah, exactly. Chanel Phoenix, Jake Andrawasa, Punch Drunk Istria, Sam Osborne, that sort of, just anybody of that background in Australia. I want that shoot match that you can't get with anybody else with me, because I've got it now. I understand how to put it together. We can talk about it. We can actually run something that's not going to look off in that way that worked MMA often does look. And then if we're going to go overseas, the dream match, honestly, the only thing that I want to do is have a match against Yusuke Fuke in Dotonbori Pro. Now, you don't know who that is, and no one knows who that is, but he's the only original UWF young boy. Like, he debuted in the UWF 2 shows before it fractured off into Pancras, UWFI, Rings, and then eventually into Pride. And he's still going at like 60 years old, still in incredible shape, just wrestling on any underground show in Japan. And so my dream is to get on a plane, go over to some fed that doesn't even video, that no one's ever heard of out in country Japan and wrestle Yusuke Fuke in a Isshu style.
Fucking awesome.
That's it. Like,
yeah.
I'm 31 years old. I am the weight that I am. I'm not going to, get on the juice, the sauce. I'm not going to suddenly put on 30 kilos in 3 months. The Fed is never coming for me. And I've come to that I had that realization before I walked into professional wrestling. I walked into this with a realistic attitude of, I will take this as far as it can go, and I will not be bitter where it cuts off. And so that goal is, I've looked at the guys that we've had go over to Japan, the places that they've gone. Scotty Magnum of AWE, excellent wrestler, but that federation has not necessarily had the best reputation and the best shows yet, but it's building up. He was on Kyushu Pro, and he got to wrestle Hitamaru Sasaki. You don't know who Hitamaru Sasaki is, but I do, and that's really cool for Scotty Magnum.
I just love how passionate you are about this. Like, you're not like trying to be like, hipster-ish or anything about it. You're just like, no, this is really fucking cool, and I think it's really cool.
It is. Hitamaru Sasaki fought on Pride Bushido. That's the pinnacle of mixed martial arts. He was there, and he fought on that show. And now he's wrestling at Kyushu Pro, which has, I don't know if it still has the relationship with ECW, but, it's bringing in guys like Scotty Magnum, who don't have the connection. When I entered professional wrestling, I had this weird thought that there was one path through to Japan. And now I see that is not the case. And guys like Xena turning up on Stardom, did not expect that to happen. Yeah.
We literally talked about that like in the earlier conversation we filmed today, which will be last week's episode when this drops on March 17th. Cheap plug wasn't intended, but like, how cool is that? Like, and KV and Rochelle, they just went and did some, like, they wrestled in a toy shop in Japan. In a toy shop. That is the cool. To me, that is the coolest thing. Fuck your big arenas. A toy shop. That is awesome.
Exactly. Like, that's it. I see it, and I see that the gatekeeping, there is no gate anymore. It got knocked over 10 years ago, but there are still people standing there going, you definitely have to come through the gate, bro.
What's the password? It's like, dude, just step aside. Like,
no, we just walk around. We can just walk straight through. And seeing that was the direction that I could go in, I believe that is, a well and truly realistic goal, and that is something that I want to do. I want to have my match against Yusuke Fuke on Dotonbori Pro.
Segueing into this next part, it's going back to your MMA background. Do you have any dream opponents for MMA?
Honestly, fighting it was something that I really, really needed when I was coming up, because I was very lost. And as I've gotten an actual life, I have things that I do now, it has taken on less and less importance. But I still very much enjoy training. If you talk to Suman or Ashkan, they'll tell you the amount of times they've seen me since I signed up and started paying membership at ATT. They can probably count on their fingers and toes, and that was like 3 years ago. So that's not necessarily good. But I would like to get it to the point of like an Alexander Otskar or one of those other guys at the time that they wrestle every other weekend and then they fight every other weekend. But that sort of journeyman as a fighter doesn't exist now, because every win and loss counts for so much more, because there are no longer mid-level fight promotions that you can go to and have fight as a journeyman, fight as a job. That sort of the ideal career path of, not necessarily the best guy, but the guy that you see on every show who always puts on something interesting, is now long been closed off by the monopolization of mixed martial arts. I'd honestly just like one more fight on... I'd probably like to break the urban curse. So if you look at my fight record on Tapology, everywhere else I fought on West Region and I fought on Storm, all wins. All my fights on Urban Fight Night, lost every single one of them badly. So maybe one more fight on Urban Fight Night and actually breaking that streak would be nice.
Nice. So,
that would...
sorry.
That would require...
No.
Yeah, that would require Urban to be able to run again, because I think someone got shot at the last event or something terrible.
Shivers.
God damn. That took a turn.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Ash and Suman, they used to be characters. They since turned their lives around and whatever else, but that connection is always still there. And organized crime and fight sports have been hand in hand for a long time. I think the last time we had something like this was, 2006? with the ballroom blitz. A bunch of bikies turned up and assaulted a bunch of people and just destroyed the venue. It's always been like that. There's always dirty money floating around somewhere. And that's not saying that Ash and Suman are running a dirty show. Like, I know how much they earn for getting in, but the people that they know, or the people that they know who they know,
a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend.
Yeah, friends of a friends of a friends of a friends will go, oh yeah, I used to know Ash back in the day. Turn up and then see someone that they don't like, and then something terrible pops off at the Hurstville Entertainment Centre. There you go.
That took a turn I was not expecting, but always new info here.
I think they've got most of that sorted out. And I don't know if they're going to necessarily run something under the Urban banner again, but they had another promotion that they ran a little while ago, which I think they'll probably do. So it'll probably be more, rather than the cage events, there'll be a ring event. They'll have K1 kickboxing and stuff like that going at the same time. That's my thoughts. I don't necessarily know. But yeah, apparently they've got all that sorted out.
So my next question, not really wrestling related, a little bit non-wrestling related. What got you into hobby painting?
Let's think. I think we've hit the lizard brain. You've unlocked some sort of core memory.
It's kind of a little bit like random after that, but like...
Yeah, this is the part where we start winding down and just pump out the fun facts before we wrap up all the socials. And
exactly.
Get to
So I was a very young boy, and we're in the car, and we're driving off to a holiday, and we're stopping off somewhere, and there's a hobby shop. And the hobby shop has a box of Zvezda Knights. So these are... Zvezda is a Russian company, and they make miniatures, and they must be magic because they're really, really small. They're 25 millimeter scale, which is... So if you think about a person, shrink them down to 2.5 centimeters tall, that's like the scale. But they're really, really detailed. And they had knights, I think they were like Agincourt knights or something. My brother and I, we popped those out of the sprue and we painted those, and then we'd strip them up and we'd repaint them, and we'd strip them up and we'd repaint them, and we did that over and over and over again. And then we bought a box of Warhammer. I think I was 8 or 10 when I got my first box of Space Marines. And then Mum got really angry about them and locked them up in a cupboard or something for an amount of years. But then, I got back into that, and that was where I spent a lot of my money. I stopped buying Warhammer because I was getting a large pile of shame. But now I have a 3D printer, so my pile is larger, but it is less expensive. If that makes sense.
Yes,
We've gone from $3 or $4 for an individual figure to an amount of cents of plastic.
Yeah, that's
and getting that thing dialed in was a bit of work in itself, but I bought that one printer and it's still going. I somehow have avoided the gear acquisition syndrome where you go to some enthusiast house and they've all got printers just on every surface printing out components for other printers.
Ones, and then there's like all these bigger ones and stuff.
Hand-painted Alistair Fleming action figures coming soon.
I've been looking at doing something for as a gimmick, as merch. Little Tony Stellino a little while ago hit me up for a set of knuckle dusters with Stellino across the front, and he thought about it, but we never committed to actually printing a whole run of those off. But just thinking of something as a gimmick for the merch table, it's coming one day.
It's like those the micro brawlers that pro wrestling tees have. Those things sell like hotcakes. I've actually got a handful of myself, and again the pile is slowly growing, and it's kind of like, this is gross, why am I wasting so much money, but they look so cool.
There you go. I've got to think of a way to model myself fairly low poly, because I'm bad at 3D modeling. I'm limited to the Microsoft Paint of 3D modeling. I can make squares and circles, but I can't really do anything else.
Following on from that, what was originally meant to be the final non-wrestling question, but we just kind of had to throw that in there. And I obviously, I didn't know you super well, because as I said, we've only met each other in person once. I'm hoping that changes as my health gets better and I'm able to travel a few more places. But being that, you've trained in wrestling and MMA, my fun fact question for you, or your non-wrestling question before we go into the plugs and for upcoming events and socials and whatever, was just simply, what is your go-to workout playlist? Because I'd imagine that, a dude like you to do fighting and wrestling and everything in between would have to train pretty hard, as most people should, and I can't wait to finally start training again. But I'd imagine surely there's some sort of,
got to be some
pump up
Vegas in
music,
there
surely.
or something.
Honestly, every time I go to Australian Top Team, I'll end up wrestling with the 18-year-old phenoms that they've got there, and just, I'm ruined for the next week. But I'm also in incredible shape. It's pretty much just once a week there, and then, recover as best I can. If I'm going to do something on myself, I just do the Gotch deck of cards. I just do, get yourself a deck of cards, shuffle it, pull a card. If it's black, you're doing twice that many squats. If it's red, you're doing that many push-ups. Made myself a push-up board with $3 of wood from Bunnings the other day just to make things even better. And I think that is just a workout. It doesn't necessarily put size on you, but it will keep you fit.
Do you have a certain workout playlist that you pump when you're doing that, or?
I just try and zone out and, pretend that I'm not in incredible pain the entire time.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. So what have you got coming up currently that we can promote here on the pod, Alistair?
I don't have a match announced yet, but March 16th, Wrestle Strong Dojo are going to Club Singleton, and I believe I'll be tagging with Adam Picard there. Not sure who we're beating up, but it will be somebody. You may or may not see me on Newey Pro shows. I'm driving up there and then. You won't see me on PWA anymore. My relationship with them has come to an end. It was a good time in my life. I learned how to wrestle very well, but the goals of that company and my goals as a wrestler, they're very, very different. You ask anybody there what their goal is, it's the WWE, it's the Fed, and that's the direction that they're all going. For me, I'm not willing to pass up an actual career in wrestling for a hypothetical career in wrestling, if that makes any sense.
That's fair enough.
That's fair.
And where can we find you on the... Sorry, continue.
Yeah, on the social medias. So there is @Ironbox Fighter on social media. That's the work Instagram. You'll get, pictures of me wrestling and whatever else. There's @GCC Wrestling Gear. That's where you can see all the gear that I've made. I have a YouTube channel where I record commentary over old school shoot matches, and you can find that by either searching for old school shoots or for looking for Gentlemen's Combatives, if you can find the YouTube channel there. That's about everything I've got to plug, apart from if you're in the market for some high-quality martial arts or professional wrestling gear, commissions are not currently open unless you want to wait for about 4 months, but after that, hit me up and I'll be able to sort you out with something. I make the best kick pads in the country. I think I make the best knee pads in the country. Everything else, feel free to get from somebody else. I believe my quality is on par, but I am a specialist in those two things, and no one does it like me. So there you go.
Awesome. I don't know if there's anything else we need to cover. I think we've done pretty well. And we condensed it pretty much almost an hour on the dot. So. Awesome. I didn't waste too much of Alice's time. You can go cook his dinner or whatever, but I feel like that was a very, very interesting conversation. It went from A to B to kind of skip D to E, but, this is what being an ADHD person running a podcast is like, and I just like talking and I like hearing people's stories, and it's kind of why I started the pod. I just like talking, which is weird, because if you see me in public, I'm just going to be like the quietest person ever, and I'm like, don't come near me, but...
There you go. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk. I always enjoy having a conversation about this sort of thing, and I look forward to seeing you on the next ICW Central West show.
Yes, I would definitely see you there in October.
Yeah, I talked to the Vortex. He's going to have someone for me, and I'll always come out to Cowra.
I'm currently booked to do play-by-play for that show, depending on my health. I may or may not put the stripes back on, but yeah, I look forward to seeing you again, and of course, the link for that show will be in the description and yada, yada, yada. But thanks for jumping on, man.
Thank you very much.
Good to meet you.
Thank you so much. All right. See you all. I've got to go cook dinner.
Thank you,
Sounds
mate.
like a plan. See you, mate.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the Iron Box Fighter, Alistair Fleming. How about that awesome intro that Mrs Crossfire did on the intro before that conversation? She went full Howard Finkel, but the best part was it wasn't intentional. She wasn't trying to be a fake ass Howard
I didn't
Finkel.
even practice it. I was just like, let's do this on a whim.
I'm just going to keep putting you on the spot for all right there. I'm just going to put you on the spot for all of these interviews. That can be your contribution, as you can help find either the song of the match of the week or both, depending on who we got, and just ring announcing and just. But I think. Obviously, of the 3 interviews we've done today as we record this, and be the third one they've heard over the span of a month time, because obviously me and you did the Heels review, which will be smushed between, so that you're technically on all 4 episodes for the whole month, which is awesome because you're my co-host now. But I feel
Who is the real me in event? Yeah,
I feel like you did a really good job of asking and segueing to some of those questions as well, while still allowing Alistair to tell his story, which is the important part. And I think we're doing good. We're doing good. One thing I'd like to mention, I was actually meant to mention it in the intro, but I just forgot because I didn't write it down. I probably should have written it down. Every time I've said MXW Coastal Chaos, I've said the 28th because I've misread my notes. The actual link, though, the description does say the 23rd, like in the description of the episode. I accidentally, with the Mighty Kai episode, because it was the first episode that I remembered to put the link for, I have gone in and I've edited that, so hopefully by the time this episode has come out, the link has, like, updated and fixed itself, because I checked Spotify and it still said the 28th, so I'm hoping it fixes itself, but if not, yes, the 23rd, this episode, and obviously the last 3 episodes, actually, by the time you hear this, will say the 23rd in the description, because I've edited it before uploading, but yeah, it did say the 28th, I think, in the outro for the Muzdog app and the Joel Southgate app, just because, again, and the Stitches, as of recording this, hasn't come out. By the time this drops, they'll hopefully be fucking out again. I don't want to jinx it, but yeah, it's the 23rd of March. Link will be in the description. ICW Central West, which we did talk about in this conversation with Alistair Fleming. That's how I first met him. Or Alistair Fleming, I should say. I'm trying to pronounce his Fleming. He's going to like come after me with those shoot kicks and be like, fucking say my name properly. And I'll be like, I'm so sorry,
say
sir.
My name, say my name.
Say, baby, I love you. That's a new song of the week now. No, the song of the week, we'll get into that. Actually, we'll recap it now. Song of the week was Anthem for the Underdogs by 12 Stones.
12 Stones.
By Mrs Crossfire and Overlee. Match of the week was Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe in the MMA Rules Steel Cage match at Lockdown 2008 for TNA. But yeah, the link for Central West, before we go too far, Emma Butler Memorial Show, actually the second Emma Butler Memorial Show on October 26th, 5 days after my 30th birthday. I am getting old as fuck.
Old boy.
Will be in the link below, and I'm hoping that with a week to go, by the time this episode goes, that there will be tickets for Insane Asylum. And the link for that will be below. And if ECW have announced...
Come on, ECW!
If ECW have announced their next show by then, which hopefully they have, I will edit that before this goes up as well. And the link for that could possibly be in the description below as well. But yeah, follow Alistair on all his socials. I'm going to have to go find his YouTube channel that he mentioned, because I had a quick search while he was talking and I couldn't quite find it. So I'll try and find it. But if not, I'll link his page and his gear making page. As I've said, I've seen his kick pads and knee pads and stuff up close.
Check them out if you're after.
Mrs Crossfire hasn't seen them yet, but I can tell you.
I actually have.
Have you?
Yes, I had a look before the episode because I was doing my research.
But I looked like I'm saying I've seen them up close.
You've seen them up close.
I've seen people wearing them, and I've seen them in action. And
actually, I haven't seen them in action. I was going to say Joel. I've seen some that Joel has had, but I think that was before Alistair did them.
Actually, he may have made those pair. I'm not sure yet.
He might have.
But yeah, it was around the time Alistair actually did start making them for him. So
could have been.
Could have been. It was in that 2022 period. But yeah. Anyway, that's just a side note between us. But yeah, I've seen his work up close, and it's makes you wonder what the fuck. I should say, it makes you wonder what Joel did to destroy them. But we know what he did to destroy them. It was death matches. But the fantastic quality. If you're just a regular old pro wrestler and you like rolling around and you want ones that will last for a couple years, a few years, a long period of time. I'm trying to like not sell this short. Like if you want someone that'll do good gear,
good quality,
hit him up. Definitely hit him up. But I think, is there anything else we need to touch on?
Not really. It was just a fun-ass episode.
Yeah, and we literally put it together on a whim. We started with the core 5. That was it. And then kind of literally, like, as it was going, it was kind of like literally fixing in notes and me sliding notes to Mrs. Crossfire and her trying to understand, like
what are you saying? You're speaking a whole different language, bro.
Trying to like signal to her that I had a new question for her. Because I threw in the one about the hobby painting, because I was just like, no, I want to learn more about that.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it was just...
I was like, Warhammer.
By that point, it was your turn to ask the question. So I was like, well, you just quickly follow that before I jump in with the official non-wrestling question. So you got 2 non-wrestling bonus questions for Alistair Fleming here. So, yeah, thanks to Alistair for coming on. He messaged me instantly as soon as we finished saying, hey, thanks again for that. No, thank you for coming on. And all 3 people that we've talked to today of recording in the last three guests, I'll say, because you're not the guest, you're the co-host. So
I'm the co-host
the last
now.
three guests we've had as of this point of this episode going up have all messaged me and said thank you for coming on, and I say to them, no, thank you for coming on, because I talk about like the numbers and this and that. Like they could look at me if they wanted to and be like, hey, you're not gonna get me views. Like no, I appreciate it. Like everyone, I appreciate Muzz, Southie, Alistair. I had probably about 7 or 8 people message me today while I was sorting these out, but I'd already locked them all in. Like it was just bang, 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 and I'm like, sick. So let me get to Sydney, let me come home and
start scheduling.
Might even get to a point where I'm going to have to start doing multiple episodes a week, which would be insane. But hey, you never know. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap this baby up?
I'm just going to keep making that content.
I am the essential John L. Crossfire. With me is always the lovely Miss Nova Lee. And you guys were just caught
in conversation. Shaka-laka-laka.